Hello and welcome back to Read Becca for another bookish week where we chat about everything that I've read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading, as well as a little chatty catch up on my week. So let's dive right into the books because I did read a lot this week. I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is a reread for me. I read this when it came out as a self-published book and loved it. So I had actually been waiting for the audiobook for a reread for months, I think over 6 months at this point, because this book is fire and everybody loves it. So I don't think I need to talk too much about it this time because I have already talked about it. This book is so lovely, and it's a cozy story about an orc who's retiring from the warrioring life and starting a coffee shop. It's all about community building, found family, and the relationships that she builds as she's trying to find out how to run a business, how to market a product that nobody has ever heard of. That's what gets to me about this and why it is a favorite book of all time. This was perfect timing though for this to come in because it is Orktober, so I'm reading orc books in October. It also is just in time for the sequel to be coming out. So I'm now, kind of caught back up, or it's actually a prequel. So it is Viv's backstory. So I was reminded of everything that I loved about this. I was actually kind of newly exposed to the fact that she really is very trepidatious about settling down. And she has so many anxieties about walking away from her old life. So I'm excited to see what her old life was a little bit more in the prequel that's coming out next month. So as far as the audio, which is obviously why I got this, Travis Baldree is a professional audio narrator. So he does the audio narration, and oh my gosh, it was stellar. He brings the characters to life, especially Cal, I think, the builder. Really great, lively characterization there. I mean, just all of the characters, I could rave on and on. Even Thimble, who barely talks, is so well personified in this book through the eyes of Travis Baldree. So I think having a narrator who is the author, who can get across the characterization that they meant to be in the book, does such a great job. So I'm very excited for the sequel in any case, and I have rambled on too long. Pick this up if you haven't, please. Then I read The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff. This was for my bestsellers project. So this unfortunately was a dud for me. This is the story of a girl in colonial Americas running. She just is running. I've spoiled the entire book for you, sorry. Start to finish, we are following a girl as she has sort of left her settlement for reasons. We do find out those reasons eventually, but it is a long, plodding run and survival journey through the wilds. I don't think we ever actually hear where she was running from, but it seems to be along the eastern coast, and she is headed to Florida for whatever reason. So she's running south along the eastern coast, I think. It's not relevant whatsoever. It doesn't matter where she's running from or to, not the point. What was the point? I don't really know. I mean, I came to understand her reasons for running, but when we got to the end, it was very much like, well, that's it. Okay. This felt a lot like West by Karis Davies. I had similar feelings when we came to the end there, and I feel that if this was engaging with similar messaging. In that story, we have a girl who is left behind and faces a lot of similar hardships as this story, but her father goes out into the wilds, and so we are seeing kind of a lot of similarity there in this wild survival journey. So this is very much about survival, about struggle and being on your own, and I didn't find that at all believable for our character. She's not believable as someone of her age or her backstory whatsoever, being on this kind of epic survival journey. She also doesn't react to really anything. She's just sort of going, and I feel like if she were that person, she wouldn't be running in the first place. She would have just gone along. And so the lack of reaction to things is pretty much a standout for why her character didn't work for me. I did come along to the prose. The prose is really lovely, especially with as much nature writing as we have here. So I'll just read you the first couple lines. The moon hid itself behind the clouds. The wind spat an icy snow at angles. In the tall black wall of the palisade, through a slit too seeming thin for human passage, the girl climbed into the great and terrible wilderness. So when I started that, I thought it seemed a little overwritten, maybe, but it did grow on me as we went along. And we aren't just getting the wilderness as, the backdrop. we see her backstory, because as she's running, she is also thinking through things and remembering things. We get the story of how she came to America. She ended up on a boat. She's a servant girl. So she was with the people that she took care of, effectively. And we do see some development, I would say, of her as a character, but no real character growth, no real change over time. And she is a very blank slate character. So that makes it hard when you are on this seemingly lengthy, difficult journey and you have no emotional connection or draw to her to really feel like there's much going on. And this is such a short book. This is not very long. So it is all about atmosphere, and it's going to get 2 stars from me for the writing and the fact that the prose did really grow on me. But everything else kind of fell apart for me. Everything that she encounters, there are so many near misses throughout this where it's not meaningful, but we're told she nearly encounters someone. And because she nearly encountered someone, why do we even care? Like, it doesn't have any effect on the story. So I didn't really love that. We also do get quite a lot of kind of male gazy aspects, and that was another thing that drew me back to West. But again, there's not really any meaning to it because it's completely separated from her story and what's actually happening to her. So it was a little disappointing. I did finish it, and I'm glad I found out why she was running, I guess, but it didn't really get me enthusiastic about reading other works from this author. So I'm up in the air on whether I would try again. The third thing that I read this week was a buddy read with Maya from Bookworm Dreams. We are working our way through the Lotlands trilogy by Jonathan French, and we read the second book, The True Bastards. And it's kind of hard to talk about because this is a second book, obviously. So there are a lot of spoilers. It's a minefield of spoilers to avoid. So the first book I felt had really strong world building. We are in this very gritty and very grimdark fantasy world with kind of all the stereotypical fantasy races and extreme oppression and conflict between factions of this world, those races. The class disparity is also there. So I think that was building toward a lot of commentary in the first book. In this book, we see a little bit of development to that, but this suffered very much from second book syndrome, I think. In part because there was a choice to do a kind of big time jump. There's a year jump from the previous book to this jump, and a change in perspective. And I think the change in perspective was good, but I think this was overlong for delivering that. It feels like there's a ton of plot built throughout this, and it didn't need it. This probably should have been like a novella length, focusing on getting across the challenges and difficulties of our new perspective. Fetch, who is the lone woman in the Hoof, which is this group of orcs who sort of run around like a biker gang on actual hogs. And they're in this very, it's not Western, but it's like a Wild West type setting where it's very lawless, it's very brutal. And you know, she has that struggle of being the only woman. So she's dealing with things kind of in the best way she can, but that's often a really harsh and not always the best. So there's so many conflicts. And I think we are still very much building toward a world of change, but it doesn't feel like we made a lot of progress in this book toward bigger change. It feels like this was kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of book. And as I said, way too much plot. So this was over 500 pages and it felt very, very long. I do think the real strength here that was also present in the first book is the battle writing. Jonathan French really writes action very well. There are a lot of conflict scenes here that were stellar, but it was less than the first book as well. So I felt like there was a lot of padding. So this was a fun one mostly, but it's very middling and mixed for me. I am looking forward to getting to the end of this trilogy to see how things further develop. So that will be coming up here, hopefully not too long off. I don't want to put it off very long and forget the whole series already, because this is a very world building heavy series. Lastly, I read Eat the Rich by Sarah Gailey. I am on the journey to read everything by Gailey. I only have, I think, 2 more of their work left. And this is their only graphic novel. It's a one-shot, as far as I know, 5 issues and completed. So it's a standalone story, which is always great. It's also horror, which I'm not always into, but I basically have liked everything from Gailey, and this was no exception. So it was really enjoyable, though a bit predictable for me. So we were following Josephine and Aster, who are very different in terms of their class, but they're a dating couple who met in university, and Aster has decided to bring Joey back to meet his family, and we're looking through Joey's eyes as she's clearly a lower class person who's been through, financial struggles and has no idea about the wealthy world she is about to step into. It's not totally clear where they are, but it seems to be, a Hamptons type place maybe, where it's just a bunch of wealthy families in their mansions, and they have a very closed and tight-knit community. And of course, almost as soon as they get there, everyone is overly nice to Joey and very welcoming, but things are a little bit off and ominous. And so that's where I would leave the plot. You want to go in very blind. However, this story is extremely familiar and similar to a very, very popular horror movie. But I loved the way that this story is taking on the predatory aspects of wealth and capitalism, really, in this horror story. So it is sort of that social commentary type of horror, and that's exactly what I am always on board for. That's what I look for in my horror, to have a little bit more than just gross stuff. So I liked the commentary that this is working in, and the ways that it's engaging in that are interesting because they feel very modern, or from a very modern lens, but that's up against an art style that feels very traditional. So I'll show some pictures here, but you can tell through the art style that it looks like something that maybe could have been written or published, 30 to 50 years ago. It's very much an older style, even in the color palette. This doesn't look like a modern comic, but yet it's pulling in these very modern themes and the ideas of critique of capitalism in a very modern lens. So I liked that juxtaposition here for this comic. So this was very enjoyable. Not a dud. I don't think I've had any real duds in Gailey's backlist, so I'm really happy to have knocked this one off and read it. I have 2 remaining works from Gailey left to read, and I'm kind of hoping, but long shot, that I will be able to finish both of those before the end of this year. That would be really fun if I got it done. So that is everything that I finished this week in terms of what I am reading. Let me reach for my pile. The priority for this weekend is to make good headway in Empress of Forever, because this is a long, chunky one that I'm reading and need to get off my currently reading pile so I can move forward. My short story collection, this is still just a slow 1 or 2 stories a week. I have started James Herriot's All Creatures Great and Small from my TBR shelf, and I have started Dark Waters by Catherine Arden. This is a middle grade and it's very fast reading, so I will finish this almost imminently, probably after I finish this video. So that is all the reading stuff. The life stuff, I don't know, I don't feel like anything has really happened significant in my personal life, but it feels like everything is going crazy in the world. So I don't have a ton to say really on all of the drama that's going on overseas and at home in the US. There is just so much. I do think that Brian from Bookish did a really great video discussing the complexity of the Israel-Palestine conflict and my feelings on that. So I would point you to check out his video if you haven't. But my feelings just in general are that he got across really well just how difficult it is to choose sides, to take sides, and the challenges that my country, the US, is going to have in supporting either side. For me personally, I would just say I have seen a lot of kind of bad takes, as far as I'm concerned, of people thinking that there is a clear right or wrong side to side with and support, when, like, if you feel that way, if you feel that there is a really simplistic, clear right and wrong here, you maybe don't have the biggest, like, background of everything that has built to where things are now. Like, there is so much that has gone into where we are today, and so many hands in the mix, that it's not just as simple as one thing that was done wrong today, So yeah, I feel like anyone who does feel that way, that it is simple to pick sides, maybe you need to go spend a few months just reading up on this conflict and the background, and then you probably will see it's not so simple. So everything going on did kind of remind me of and pushed me to go rewatch this conversation that I had seen between Richard Dawkins, a prominent kind of atheist thinker and skeptic, and Tim Minchin, who's a comedian and also prominent skeptic. I very much align with Tim's thoughts in general about life, and just love everything about him. So it reminded me of one part of this, not to do with the skeptic part or atheism part, but to do with discussing how we've adapted to the world and the fact that we're getting a constant fire hose of information that we cannot handle, really. It's too much for us. And our circle of caring has to be limited in some way. So on BookTube, I do see a lot of that sort of thing where people are upset if someone doesn't react to the new big thing that's going on. And everyone can only do their best. And you don't know what's going on with people in their own life. They may have enough going on just directly in their line of sight that they can barely deal with, much less dealing with the major things that are going on in the world. So if somebody doesn't react, I feel like that's okay. Like, we need to normalize that being okay, that people need to sometimes just keep going on about the normalcy of BookTube and not react or, set out their viewpoints on these major topics in the world, and that's all right. They talked about the idea that that's similar to how we are with sugar. We just haven't evolved and adapted to the world that we're in, really. We keep shoveling sugar into our diets, and we love it, but too much to our detriment. We are the same with a lot of the information on the internet. We will doom scroll and get locked into simplistic thinking or reactionary thinking, and I don't like to do that. So I don't think beyond this I'm going to put out much more personal thoughts. I think this is a very complex time, both where I live and abroad, and I personally am going to roll with it, just doing my best to have empathy for individual people and caring for them as best I can. So I think that's enough. I've rambled enough. So that is it for my bookish week. I hope everyone is having a wonderful week of reading, and I did post up the announcement for my upcoming readathon November, the third year here on BookTube. So I will be making the best effort to get the prompts out this week, because I realize we are very much coming up to the end of October, so people are going to be wanting to set their TBRs. So I will do my best to get that out. So I think that's it for me today. Thank you so very much for watching.